just published a piece along with Andrew Perez in response to the anti-abortion bill, or I should say law, in the state of Texas. Please check it out over at Jacobin. And so I wanted to ask you a few questions about it because while I agree with the piece, I am curious. Like, one of the issues with the way that this law was written was that the state gets to say, well, we're not enforcing this anti-abortion measure. We have allowed for private citizens to do this. And so they're the ones, the private citizens are the ones enforcing this law. But if they were to bring forth a lawsuit, wouldn't that lawsuit need to be adjudicated within the court system? And isn't the court system part of the state?
Well, sure. And I think that, you know, the law that we talked about, or the bill, I should say, that we talked about, that's been bottled up in committee in Congress. I mean, that bill says that essentially that the states can't make law that essentially impede access to abortion and women's reproductive health. So the way I read it, and I'm not a lawyer, but the way I read it is that if a federal law codifying Roe v. Wade, that bill was signed into law, it would effectively invalidate and outlaw, preempt the Texas law, because the Texas law clearly does create an impediment to abortion services. And I think the question then becomes, why have the Republicans been able to pass state laws restricting abortion? And at the federal level, the Democrats have promised a federal law that codifies the Roe precedent. Why has that bill been sitting in committee? Now, it's a self-answerable question. A big reason is because the presumption is that it can't pass muster, can't pass the Senate through a filibuster. So everything in our politics continues to go back to the question of the filibuster, which is really sad and pathetic. And frankly, I think it saps the energy out of American politics, among others. Not only does it stop things from actually happening, but it basically says to the country that no matter what you want, no matter how much organizing you do, there's just a roadblock to basically everything. And you know what that does to our politics, I think, and what that message sends to people out there is that the government really is structurally unable to respond to what people may want, structurally unable to deliver on what politicians promise they're going to deliver.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that, because, you know, just yesterday in response to what the Supreme Court did in failing to block the law as it makes its way through the federal courts, you know, Biden issued a strongly worded statement. You know, he's like, this is outrageous. I am going to deploy the Department of Health and Human Services to see what the federal government can do about this. But other than that, it was a vague statement. So what were your thoughts on that? Because it seems like he's kind of playing stupid and pretending as if like, oh, what can we do? I'm going to get the Department of Health and Human Services to study it, just like I was going to get a commission to study gun violence to figure out what to do about, you know, weapons in the country. It's just like, what was your reaction to it?
I think Joe Biden understands the formula in Democratic politics that has worked in some ways. I put worked in quotes, worked for politicians, which is to say that say the right thing, sound like you're on the side of your promises, of what Democratic voters want, and then don't necessarily do what actually needs to be done to deliver on the spirit of the words that you're saying. So I think he's mastered that in a lot of ways. I think I mean, it's not hard to master. It's not rocket science. It's pretty cynical, but basically say the right things. Lots of Democratic voters just want politicians who sound like they're on their side, and nobody will really pay attention to the details. Now, I think maybe that it may end up being different here. I think that this is such a high-profile issue that maybe people will follow the details. But look, we saw that. We've seen this pattern in the past. I mean, this was a guy who campaigned on a $15 minimum wage, who bailed out on it the first possible chance there was in the stimulus bill. He was lauded for saying he was going to support vaccine patent waivers, and that was months ago, and nothing's really happened on that, and the administration really hasn't followed through in a lot of ways on that. So he got all the praise, and then everyone 15 minutes later forgot. And maybe I shouldn't say everybody, but lots of people. And it's what I call the tongue in cheek, I call the goldfish syndrome. I mean, the American political system seems unable to remember beyond 15 minutes. We forget our whole world every 15 minutes, like a goldfish. By the way, a goldfish apparently doesn't actually forget its world every 15 minutes, but so the apocryphal story goes. And I think that Joe Biden cynically has internalized this. He just can go out, say some good things, bank on the idea that 15 minutes later, everybody will forget and we'll move on to the next crisis, the next story, and that's it. And I think it's kind of pathetic. But, this is what Democratic voters continue to vote for. And I've reached a point in my life where I'm starting to wonder if we're getting the world that Democratic voters actually want, or at minimum willing to tolerate. A world in which politicians flatter them with nice speeches and then don't actually use the levers of power to deliver on the promises that they're making. And that if voters continue to reward that, that's essentially what voters want, and that's what voters are being given right now.
If you enjoyed this video from Jacobin Weekends, please hit like and subscribe. That way, you'll enjoy all of our backlog, as well as all of our future content, including interviews, live streams, and clips. Thank you.